"You don't understand modern families, Eleanor," my daughter-in-law said, smiling like the words were harmless. I just nodded, stirring my tea until the spoon stopped trembling. Understanding doesn't age, it only waits. If that line speaks to you, like and share this story, and tell me where you're listening from. My name is Eleanor Price, and I am 64 years old. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, in the same salt-weathered house where my husband, Richard, and I raised our son. He's gone now, my husband, I mean, but his calm presence still lingers in the quiet corners, the smell of coffee in the morning, the old jazz records stacked by the player, the worn slippers under the bench near the door. I used to think love left when people did. Now I know it settles differently. It hides inside small routines that never forget. My son Michael is 35. He's gentle, intelligent, and a little too eager to keep peace. He married Tessa 3 years ago, and at first I thought she was exactly what he needed. Bold, where he was careful, decisive where he hesitated. Tessa has one of those modern smiles that seems trained for photographs, a confidence born from being seen. She runs a lifestyle channel online, giving advice about balance, self-worth, and empowered families. Her voice fills rooms even when she's not there, because everything about her demands attention. I admired her spirit once. Their daughter, my granddaughter Lily, is 6, bright, tender, and curious about everything. She loves the garden behind my house, especially the old swing her grandfather built. She says it feels like flying when I push her. I tell her that's what freedom should feel like, steady, not wild. Those afternoons with Lily are my quiet joy. When she laughs, the world sounds exactly as it should. At first, my relationship with Tessa was easy enough. We shared lunches downtown, talked about parenting, and pretended our differences were only generational. She would smile when I offered advice and say, "You're such a classic, Eleanor," as if I were a quaint book she'd skim through but never reread. I didn't mind then. Experience teaches you not to take offense at every small dismissal. People often confuse novelty for progress. When they bought their new home, I helped them paint Lily's room and unpack the kitchen. Michael would thank me a dozen times, embarrassed by how much I did, while Tessa would post photos captioned, "Building our forever home with love and hard work." I smiled at those pictures, proud to see my family shining, even if some of that shine was only digital. But as time passed, the balance shifted. Small things began to feel rehearsed. Invitations to dinner came less often, replaced by text messages about busy weeks and brand deadlines. I noticed Tessa's words grew sharper whenever I offered a thought that didn't fit her version of life. "We're not doing things the old way anymore, Eleanor," she said once, laughing as she poured wine. "You just have to understand how modern families work now." Modern families. The phrase stuck in my mind like a stone in a shoe. I didn't argue. I simply smiled and said, "I suppose I'll learn." But part of me already knew that love, for some, is easier when it's staged. I didn't yet realize that her performance would begin to crack, and that when it did, she'd finally understand what I meant all along. If you've ever watched someone mistake style for substance, you'll know this quiet ache. It isn't anger, it's the patience of seeing truth coming toward you, even when you wish it wouldn't. It happened over dinner one humid evening in June. The air outside hung thick with salt and magnolia, and the cicadas were already loud enough to make conversation pause every few minutes. I had cooked Michael's favorite lemon chicken with roasted vegetables and set the table with my old porcelain dishes, the ones that had seen decades of birthdays and quiet reconciliations. Tessa arrived late, balancing her phone in one hand and a tote bag filled with camera equipment in the other. "Sorry," she said breathlessly, kissing the air near my cheek. "I was filming a segment about time management. It's ironic, right?" She laughed before I could answer. Michael followed, tired but smiling faintly, carrying Lily's backpack. "Mom, it smells amazing," he said. "She's been talking about your cooking all week." I smiled. That's a good sign. It means she remembers what's real. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Lily chattered about her drawing project at school. Michael asked about my book club, and Tessa scrolled between bites, occasionally showing us a picture from her feed. But halfway through the meal, the conversation turned. She began talking about a couple they knew who were experimenting with what she called a progressive marriage. Michael looked uncomfortable. I said nothing, just listened. "You know," Tessa said, her tone light, "I think traditional relationships are kind of outdated. Modern families are all about flexibility, shared roles, independent goals, open communication." I nodded. "Those sound like good things," I said carefully. "As long as they're rooted in respect." She smiled in that way people do when they're about to correct you. Respect is important, but so is freedom. People can't live trapped in the old models anymore. My followers love hearing about how Michael and I balance everything equally. No one has to sacrifice. I looked at my son, who was staring into his plate. Balance, I said softly. It's easy to talk about until someone has to carry more weight, she set her fork down. Eleanor, you have to admit, your generation had it easier. Clear roles, simple expectations. The world's different now. I smiled, though I felt my chest tighten. Different, yes. Easier? No. We just didn't have hashtags to explain our mistakes. Michael chuckled nervously, trying to diffuse the tension. Let's not debate sociology at dinner, he said. But Tessa wasn't finished. You don't understand modern families, Eleanor, she said, her voice calm, but with that faint edge of superiority that only youth can sharpen. I took a slow breath, feeling the words settle inside me like small stones in deep water. Maybe, I said quietly, or maybe I just understand that families old or modern are still made of people, not theories. The room went silent. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. Lily looked up from her mashed potatoes, sensing the stillness, and said, Grandma, can I have dessert? I smiled. Of course, sweetheart. That small act broke the tension like sunlight through clouds. After they left, I washed the dishes slowly, thinking about her words. I wasn't hurt. Not exactly. I was curious. What did modern mean to her? Freedom from responsibility? Reinventing love until it fit a camera frame? Or was it simply forgetting that family, at its core, is about endurance more than excitement? 3 weeks passed without another dinner. Texts came, short and polite. Hope you're well. Busy week. And then silence. Michael called once, sounding distracted. Work's crazy, Mom. We'll visit soon. I told him to take his time. I didn't tell him that I already missed Lily's laugh echoing down the hall. It was mid-August when I noticed the first real sign of change. Lily came to stay with me one weekend and mentioned her parents had been having loud talks. She said it matter-of-factly, the way children do when they're repeating something they don't understand but feel deeply. My stomach tightened. I asked gently, Do you feel okay, sweetheart? She nodded. Daddy sleeps on the couch sometimes. Mommy says it's temporary. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the light flicker in their upstairs window across town. I could almost feel the weight of silence inside their home. Tessa's words replayed in my mind. You don't understand modern families. Maybe I didn't. Or maybe I understood all too well that anything built without gratitude eventually crumbles under its own pride. The following weeks felt like walking through fog. I could sense something coming, but not clearly enough to name it. Michael stopped calling altogether, and Tessa's online world began to feel like a window into denial. Her social media showed sunsets, perfect dinners, and captions about gratitude, yet every photo seemed staged, tighter than the last. I didn't comment or question. I just watched quietly, like a doctor observing symptoms she already recognized. Then one morning, I received an email from Lily's school. It was a reminder about overdue tuition. The message had gone to the parents' list, and I'd been copied by mistake because I'd once been listed as an emergency contact. The line at the bottom read, Payment pending for 2 months. Please remit by the 15th to avoid interruption. My heart sank. Michael had always been meticulous about money. Something had changed. I printed the email and placed it in a small folder. I didn't intend to use it. I just needed to keep record of what was real. That was habit from my years as a family therapist. Truth is never just heard. It's collected. Later that week, I stopped by the local Harborview Credit Union, where Michael had opened his first savings account as a teenager. The same manager, Robert Jennings, still worked there. I greeted him, pretending I was there for general advice. Robert, I said, my son banks here, and I'm thinking about opening a small account for Lily's college fund. Could you tell me if their joint account is still active? He smiled, typing a few things, then paused. Ah, yes, it's active, but nearly empty. Lots of transfers between accounts. Looks like things have been tight. I thanked him politely, though inside, I felt a quiet ache, the kind that comes from realizing your child might be drowning while pretending to float. Before I left, Robert slipped me a small printout showing the last balance $462.17. I folded it carefully, adding it to my folder. My first tangible truth prop. That evening, I called Michael, keeping my voice light. How are you holding up? I asked. He sighed. Busy, Mom. Just juggling a lot. I hesitated. Is everything all right with Lily's school? There was silence on the other end, then a half-hearted chuckle. Yeah, just a clerical delay. Tessa's handling it. I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone told me he was standing guard over embarrassment, not truth. After we hung up, I opened my journal and wrote, "Denial sounds like composure, but it's made of cracks." A few days later, I stopped by Tessa's social media again. Her new post showed her holding a bouquet of roses in the living room, the caption reading, "When life gets messy, smile bigger." I stared at the photo longer than I should have. Behind her perfect smile, I saw shadows, boxes stacked near the wall, a missing picture frame, a kind of forced brightness. Even the comments beneath felt strained. At St. Peter's Church that Sunday, I ran into my old colleague Marian Doyle, a retired social worker who'd once shared my practice. She could read faces the way others read newspapers. "You look worried," she said as we poured coffee after the service. I told her what little I knew, just the outline, not the details. She nodded slowly. Families like that live on appearances. The cracks will keep widening until someone shines light on them. The question is, will you be the one to hold the lamp? Her words stayed with me. I didn't want to interfere, but I also couldn't stand by while Michael's life unraveled under the banner of modern independence. That evening, I placed the printed school email and the bank slip in a sealed envelope and wrote across the front, "Keep for clarity, not control." I tucked it into the drawer of my writing desk, beside Richard's old cufflinks. Days turned into weeks. The signs grew clearer. Lily spent more weekends with me. Michael's voice grew hollow on the phone, and Tessa's posts slowed down until they stopped altogether. Silence, in my experience, is never just peace. It's usually a signal that truth has run out of disguises. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew I needed to be ready to respond with grace, not anger, when the moment finally arrived. Because no matter how modern families become, the fall of love still sounds the same. Marian Doyle came over 2 days later, carrying a pie and that steady, practical air she always had when life got complicated. We'd shared 40 years of friendship through careers, births, and funerals, and she'd never once offered advice before she'd had her coffee. "You made that face," she said as soon as she sat down. "The one you wear when you're pretending not to worry." I poured her a cup and smiled. "It's my most practiced expression." She took a sip, then leaned forward. "Tell me what's really going on." I laid out what I'd learned, the school notice, the empty account, the phone calls that sounded like apologies without words. She listened quietly, not interrupting once. When I finished, she said, "You were a therapist for 30 years, Eleanor. You know this dance. He's protecting her, she's protecting an image. And no one's protecting the child in the middle." I nodded. "I keep thinking if I step in, I'll only make things worse. But if I stay out, I'll watch them fall apart." Marian tapped her fingers on the table. "Then step in with compassion, not control. Truth lands softer when it arrives in kindness. You can't fix their marriage, but you can remind them what family looks like without judgment." She was right, of course. That's why I'd called her. She always had a way of cutting through my restraint without breaking it. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Document, observe, and wait?" She smiled faintly. "You've already done that. Now you prepare to be the safe place they'll come to when the pretending ends." We spent the next hour outlining boundaries, not interference, but readiness. She suggested I gather what evidence I had in one place, not to confront but to reassure. When truth surfaces, you'll have what you need to guide them toward help. Don't use it to shame, use it to steady. After she left, I felt oddly calm. I looked through my folder, the school email, the bank slip, my notes, and realized Marian was right. It wasn't proof I held, it was perspective. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Intervention without love is intrusion. Love without truth is enablement. The balance is grace." The following week, I met Marian for a walk by the river. The azaleas were blooming, and children ran ahead of their parents, laughing. "It's funny," I said. "I spent my life teaching families how to talk. Now I'm learning how to wait for them to listen." Marian nodded. "Waiting is also a conversation. Silence says more than you think." A few days later, I got a text from Michael. "Can you watch Lily Friday night?" I replied, "Yes, of course." It wasn't the request that struck me, it was the time. He'd never asked for help on a Friday before. Something had shifted. When I picked Lily up, she hugged me tightly. "Mommy's sad," she whispered. She said her jaw broke. I kissed the top of her head. "Then we'll fix it with kindness." As we drove home, I thought about what Marian had said about being ready when the pretending ended. I didn't know when that moment would come, but I could feel it nearing, like thunder rolling closer even before the first rain. Summer pressed down on Charleston like a warm hand that would not lift. The days stretched long, and my phone began to glow at strange hours. At first, it was one late message from Michael, then 3 in a week. By July, there were 12 short texts, all sent after midnight, each one careful and vague. We're fine. Just a rough patch. Can you keep Lily tomorrow? Do you still have that old budget template? I answered every time with the same 3 gifts I could offer from a distance. Yes, I can help. I love you, and I am here. I did not ask for details. I let him keep his dignity, while the truth gathered itself. Tessa's world began to contract. Sponsorships slowed, and comments under her posts turned sharp. People notice when an image grows thin. She doubled down at first, posting brighter photos and longer captions about resilience. But the smile in her eyes started to fade. Behind each shot, I could see the edges of boxes, a stray bill on a counter, or a wilted flower placed too carefully. Her followers wrote things like, "Stay strong and you got this." I read those lines with a nurse's calm, the same calm you keep when you already know the fever will break on its own time. Lily came to me more often. She brought drawings of houses with 2 doors and a couch floating between them. Children tell the truth in symbols. On Saturdays, we baked bread and watched the dough rise. I told her that patience makes ordinary things stronger. She nodded, as if I had given her a secret. Sometimes she asked, "Is Mommy okay?" I would say, "She is learning a new part of her story." That was true. It was also kind. One afternoon, Michael stopped by unannounced. He looked washed thin by worry. He tried to make small talk for a few minutes, then his voice cracked. "I did something foolish," he said quietly. "I took a second mortgage to help Tessa's business. It felt temporary. It is not." I did not gasp or scold. I set a cup of tea in front of him and waited. He pressed his fingers to his eyes. I thought I was being a good husband. Now I feel like a foolish man. I touched his hand. "Good husbands and foolish men can be the same person on a hard day," I said. "The world will let you be both. After that, you pick one." He nodded, relief flickering like a small light. The money strain began to speak in the house. The pretty chair from the entry disappeared. A rug vanished from the living room. Tessa sold pieces that once made her backdrops glow. She told her followers she was refreshing the space. She told herself she was shedding weight, but each empty corner revealed more than it hid. Michael worked late, took side contracts, and slept on the couch. They barely spoke except in whispers that Lily heard anyway. Marian and I kept walking by the river twice a week. I reported what I knew in brief lines. We did not feed the story with speculation. We built a small plan instead. If the tuition notice escalated, I would quietly cover 1 month with Michael's permission and a promise of a repayment schedule. If he resisted, I would accept that too. It was not my job to rewrite their choices. It was my job to keep Lily's world steady for as long as I was allowed. In August, a sponsorship collapsed publicly. A vendor claimed invoices were unpaid. The story drifted across Tessa's online circle like smoke. She posted a statement about miscommunication and grace. The comments turned. Some were cruel, some were weary. A few soft voices urged her to rest. She did not rest. She filmed a long video about modern expectations and personal boundaries. She said, "Families should not be judged by traditional yardsticks." I watched the clip twice. Her words floated, but her eyes sank. Late one night, my phone rang instead of chimed. Michael's voice was tight. "Mom, she is at her sister's. I am trying to balance the accounts. Lily is asleep. I need to ask a favor I should have asked months ago." I kept my reply simple. "What do you need tonight? And what do you need next month?" He exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath underwater. "Tonight, I need a listener. Next month, I need a map," I said. "You can have both." The next morning, I took out a blank notebook and wrote 3 columns. In the first, I listed facts, not feelings. 12 late-night messages, tuition overdue, joint account at $462.17. Second mortgage opened in June. In the second, I listed supports. Marian for referrals, a budget template I had saved, the credit union manager who still remembered us by name. In the third, I wrote boundaries. I would not rescue, I would not shame. I would not let Lily feel at fault for the weather of adult lives. Days became a montage of quiet tasks. I packed Lily's lunches with little notes tucked under the napkin. I washed a spare quilt and left it folded by the couch for Michael. I kept the porch light on later than usual. None of these things fixed anything. They reminded the house that love was still working. Tessa avoided me for weeks. When we finally crossed paths at school pickup, she wore sunglasses, though the sun was already low. "Hi," she said, voice bright and brittle. I said, "Hello, dear. How is your heart today?" She stared at me as if I had spoken a language no one had offered her in a long time. "Tired," she whispered. "So tired of performing." I nodded. Then perhaps it is time to rehearse truth. She laughed once, a sound without joy, and walked away. The credit union called Michael about a missed payment. He texted me a screenshot and 2 words. I know. I did not reply with advice. I sent him a photo of Lily holding a library book with a gold star sticker. Under it I wrote, 1 page at a time. He answered with a single heart. It was small, but it was movement. When the heat finally broke, a hard rain swept the city clean. That same week, Tessa posted nothing at all. The silence widened until even her most loyal followers began asking if she was well. She deleted comments, then turned them off. Image cannot breathe without air. Truth can. On a Thursday evening, I found an envelope on my porch. Inside was a handwritten note from Tessa. I said you did not understand modern families. I was wrong. I do not understand them either. I am losing the one I built for the internet and the one I live in at the same time. Please do not give up on Lily. Please do not give up on me. There was no signature, only a small pressed flower taped to the corner, delicate and brave. I showed the note to Marian the next morning. She read it and looked up with that clear gaze she saves for turning points. This is the moment, she said. The pretending has ended. She is ready to talk to an adult who will not humiliate her. I closed my eyes for a second and let the relief pass through me like a tide. Then I will be that adult, I said. That night, I set the kitchen table the way I did when Michael was a boy facing a hard truth. 2 cups, 1 box of tissues, and my small folder. The school email and the bank slip rested inside, not as weapons, but as anchors. I did not know whether Tessa would come. I did not know what she would ask. I only knew that the next part of the lesson had arrived and that Grace would need a chair. When the doorbell rang, the rain had begun again, softer this time. I opened the door to find Tessa without makeup, hair pulled back, eyes red and honest. She stepped inside and looked around like a traveler, finally admitting she is lost. I do not know how to do this, she said. I answered, we will start with the truth, then we will make tea. She exhaled and nodded. If you have ever waited while someone's life unspooled toward honesty, you know this ache. It is the ache of love choosing patience over pride. It is also the beginning of repair. Tessa stood in my kitchen like a storm that had finally decided to rain. She held the back of the chair with both hands, steadying herself, eyes swollen but focused. I set the kettle on and waited for it to sing. Small rituals help people breathe. When it clicked off, I poured slowly and slid a cup toward her. She wrapped her fingers around the heat without drinking. I said terrible things, she whispered. I kept saying I could manage everything. I nodded. You carried a show for too long. She looked up sharply, as if expecting a lecture. I did not give one. I opened the folder and smoothed the top page with my palm. This is a copy of the school email, I said, keeping my tone even. It came to me by mistake. Her shoulders sagged, but she did not look away. I planned to fix it, she said. I kept thinking the next brand deal would land. I placed the second page beside the first, the small printout from the credit union. This shows the balance the day your account ran dry. She flinched. I know that number, she said. I still hear it when I try to sleep. I folded my hands. I did not keep these to shame you. I kept them to keep the conversation honest. She blinked hard, then nodded. Thank you for not making a speech. I smiled faintly. Speeches rarely help. Maps do. For a while, we let the clock fill the room. Tessa stared at the papers like a mirror that finally told the truth. Michael thinks I ruined his life, she said quietly. He does not, I replied. He thinks you both lost the way. She swallowed. He took a second mortgage because I begged. I kept saying modern couples invest in each other. I poured more tea. Modern or old, couples still fail when image outruns integrity. She winced, but she stayed. You must think I am a fraud, she said. No, I answered. I think you are a woman who confused applause with safety. That can happen to anyone who feels unseen without a camera. She covered her face for a moment. Then, lowered her hands. I told you that you did not understand modern families, she said. I was arrogant. I shook my head. You were afraid. Fear often dresses as certainty. She breathed out slowly. I want to save my marriage, but I do not know how to live without the persona I built. I slid a small notepad toward her. Then we will write the next version. It will be shorter and real. She gave a tired laugh. Shorter and real sounds like exile. I met her eyes. It will feel like exile for a while. Then it will feel like rest. I turned the folder so she could read clearly. Here is what I see, I said. Tuition must be paid, or Lily's world will tip. Your joint account is nearly empty. The second mortgage is a fire that needs a plan. None of this is moral failure. It is math and honesty. She traced the edge of the paper with her finger. Do you have a plan? She asked. Or do I have to invent one while crying? I let the corner of my mouth lift. I have a first step. After that, you and Michael will choose the rest. I took out a clean sheet and wrote 3 lines. First, you and Michael meet with Marian's referral for counseling next week. Non-negotiable. Second, pause the channel and issue a clear note to your audience. No drama, only truth. Tell them you need time to repair your home. Third, call the credit union tomorrow with Michael and set a hardship schedule. You ask, they answer. You write it down. She stared at the page like it was a rope over water. And Lily? She asked, voice trembling. Lily stays with me this weekend, I said. She will bake bread and draw a map of the moon. You two will have 72 hours to breathe and speak like adults. Her face crumpled with relief she tried to hide. You are not angry with me, she said. Anger is noisy, I replied. I am invested, that is quiet. She wiped her eyes with the cuff of her sleeve. I kept waiting for you to grasp. Say I told you so. I shook my head. You already told yourself. My job is to help you listen. She nodded, and I watched a kind of dignity return to her posture, thin but present. What about the followers? She asked. Many will leave, I said. Let them go. The ones who stay will be worth being honest for. We moved to the table where the light falls kindly in late evening. I handed her a pen. Write Michael a message, I said. 2 sentences. No blame. She thought for a long moment, then wrote, I want us to tell the truth and start again. I will do the work. She looked up. Is that enough? I nodded. For tonight, yes. She pressed send and stared at the screen as if it might judge her. When it did not, she set the phone down like a fragile dish. Before she left, she paused at the doorway. Eleanor, she said, will you stand with me if I fall again? I stepped closer and straightened the collar of her jacket the way I once did for Michael before job interviews. Falling is part of the walk, I said. I will stand near until you can stand steady. She nodded, then hesitated. Do you forgive me for the things I said? I answered simply. I forgave you the day you said them. Forgiveness is how I keep a clear head for days like this. She went out into the rain, face turned upward as if to test whether the sky would soften. I watched her cross the path, shoulders squared against the weather, and I felt something shift. It was not triumph. It was the sound a house makes when a window finally opens. I turned off the porch light and carried the folder back to the drawer. The papers went in last. On top I placed a small note for myself. Use only for safety, never for winning. When the quiet settled, I sat with my tea until it cooled. I thought about the sentence that began all this. You do not understand modern families. Perhaps she was right in one way. I do not understand families as a brand, or love, as a show. But I understand vows and budgets and sleep and play and silence. I understand that children cannot read hashtags, only faces. I understand that truth, once it enters a room, asks everyone to sit down and choose. The next morning began with quiet sunlight and the sound of Lily's small footsteps on the stairs. The house smelled of coffee and calm. Tessa had texted just before dawn. We met with the counselor. It wasn't easy, but we stayed the whole hour. I whispered a thank you to no one and started making pancakes. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm of repair began slow, uneven, but real. Michael called each night after Lily fell asleep. The calls were short, like someone testing ice before stepping fully on it. We talked about honesty, he'd say. We argued, but not cruelly. Tessa sent updates too, usually short lines without emojis. I'm learning to pause before posting. We paid the first tuition balance. They weren't confessions, they were evidence of motion. Marian and I met for lunch every Thursday. I told her what little I knew and what I refused to worry about. They'll find their shape, she said. You taught them how by example, I smiled. I only reminded them that families are verbs, not nouns. At church, people still asked about Tessa's online presence. I shrugged politely. She's on a break. They nodded, curiosity satisfied by grace. It was remarkable how peace could sound like privacy when spoken gently. By early autumn, the second mortgage had been refinanced under Michael's name alone. He called it his clean slate. He also started volunteering on weekends at a youth tech program, the kind of steady, real-world work that doesn't trend online. Tessa found part-time work at a community arts center, helping teenagers film short documentaries. It feels strange, she told me once, creating things no one has to like. I smiled. That's what makes them beautiful, Lily began. To smile differently too. Her drawings changed houses with one door again, trees taller than roofs. When she came to visit, she told me, Mommy and Daddy talk in the kitchen now, not in whispers. I told her, that's what grown-ups sound like when they remember they're on the same team. One evening, Tessa stopped by unannounced. She looked like someone who had just come in from a long walk in the rain, tired, open, grateful. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Not for saving us, for not making me feel unworthy of being saved." I offered her tea, but she shook her head. "Michael's waiting in the car. We just came from counseling. He said to tell you, thank you for being our calm when everything else was noise." I smiled. "Calm is cheaper than advice," I said. "And it lasts longer." She laughed softly, a real sound this time. Before leaving, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed letter from the school, balance paid in full. I folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer beside the earlier papers. Not as record, but as reminder. Restoration leaves its own receipts. The next Sunday, we all went to the park. Michael and Tessa sat on the bench while Lily played on the swings. She called out for higher pushes, and both of them ran toward her at the same time, laughing when they collided. I watched from a distance, feeling that familiar ache that comes when things begin to heal, not quickly, not perfectly, but enough. When they dropped me home, Michael hugged me tightly. "You never said, 'I told you so,'" he said. I touched his cheek, because I never needed to be right. I just needed you both to be whole. Tessa's eyes filled. "You were right about one thing, though," she said. "Families break when they perform. They heal when they practice." I nodded. That's modern enough for me. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, "Peace isn't silence. It's everyone finally talking at the right volume." If you've ever held your tongue long enough for someone else to hear their own truth, you know how hard grace works before it rests. 6 months later, autumn settled gently over Charleston, painting the marshes in bronze and the sky in pewter. My porch smelled of jasmine and old wood, and the evenings came with that hush I've always loved when even the wind seems to listen. Lily was back in school, thriving. Her teacher sent home notes about her storytelling skills, how she always spoke about truth maps and family teamwork. I smiled reading that. Children repeat what they live, not what they're told. Michael and Tessa invited me to a small gathering for Lily's school play. They arrived early, carrying a casserole dish and easy smiles. I noticed right away Tessa's phone stayed in her purse. She sat close to Michael, whispering small jokes, their laughter quiet but unforced. During intermission, she joined me by the snack table. "You were right," she said softly. "Families aren't modern or traditional. They're just honest or they're not." I looked at her and saw the woman she might have been all along, untouched by performance, made human by humility. "Honesty ages well," I said. "It never goes out of style." She nodded. "I still have your note from that night," she said. "The one that said, 'Use only for safety, never for winning.' It's how I think about love now." I reached for her hand. "Then you've already learned the lesson." When Lily's class came on stage, her small voice carried through the hall, strong and sure. Michael slipped his arm around Tessa's shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see a fragile family trying to prove itself. I saw a real one, learning the rhythm of repair. As I walked home later, the street lamps glowed in puddles left by an earlier rain. I thought about how life keeps teaching us the same truths, just with different students. Some lessons come loud, others quietly, but they all lead back to grace. If you've ever watched pride turn into peace, tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Her Voices. Your voice matters.